right, have we got the language interpretation slide up? Just want to make sure we're...
Yep, I see it.
Excellent. All right, well then let's go ahead and get started. Also, good evening, everyone, and welcome. Before we, oops, sorry, go ahead, Gavin.
No one's in the room yet. We have to let them first.
Right.
Are you...
Okay, gotcha.
Okay,
I hope you recorded that bit.
Yep. Okay, the room is open and everybody is in.
Okay, great. So good afternoon or good evening, everyone, and welcome. Before we get started, I'd like to present some instructions for accessing language interpretation for those who need it. To access Spanish or Hmong interpretation, select Interpretation and then select Spanish or Hmong. The interpreters will also translate for any of the Spanish or Hmong speakers, speaking community who wish to speak upon being called on by the facilitator. And now I'll ask the interpreters themselves to come off mute. If the Spanish interpreter could provide instruction in Spanish. Amelia.
Thank you, I couldn't unmute. Muy buenas tardes a todos. Este es el primer taller para las necesidades de la comunidad para el Plan de Acción Anual. Esta junta está siendo traducida simultáneamente en español. Para poder acceder a la interpretación, si está por computadora, seleccionará el icono del mundo que saldrá en algunos segundos y luego seleccionará el lenguaje español y poner en modo silencio el audio original. Si está por su teléfono, seleccionará los 3 puntitos que significan más y seleccionará interpretación y lenguaje de español. Muchas gracias.
Excellent, thank you. And Lee, if you could provide the same in Hmong.
Sorry, I couldn't unmute either. Nhớ trong the nói lúc công hồ do had do nó giờ các sai do đúng không sai được có một the select interpretation cái nhớ đó đúng không thôi có một đấy giờ các sai giờ các sai do đúng không lấy một đó có chơi lúc không sai thôi có một lúc không sai bây mà sai đúng không rồi tất cả ở chỗ. Thank you.
Thank you. With that then, Gavin, if you can turn on the interpretation and give folks a few seconds to get settled, and then we'll get going.
Be set they're on and going.
Are we good to go, Gavin?
Yeah, you should be fine.
Okay, excellent. All right, we'll get started. So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the 2021 to 2022 Annual Action Plan for HUD Community Planning and Development Funding Community Workshop. This is the first of 2 workshops. Tomorrow's workshop will be at 10:30 a.m. The content will be identical to this one, but attendees are welcome to attend both if you'd like to participate. Before we get started, here are some general procedures for Zoom. In the main room, all participants will be muted until they are called upon, at which point they may unmute their microphone. Also, participants' video will not be displayed during the meeting. And to facilitate electronic access, we ask that you do not speak until you're recognized by one of the facilitators. If you'd like to change your name, the name that appears on your Zoom account, use the drop-down menu and click on Rename to change your name. If you have a question or would like to make a comment, click on the icon labeled Participants at the bottom center of your PC or Mac screen. At the bottom of the window on the right side of the screen, click the icon labeled Raise Hand, and your digital hand will then be raised. If you have a question or would like to make a comment and you have joined by phone, you can press *9 and we will call on you to unmute your phone. We'll start with some introductions. Today in attendance, we have from the Planning and Development Department, Jennifer Clark, the Director, and Thomas Gaffery, Assistant Director. And from the Housing and Community Development Division, we have Thomas Morgan, the manager of that division. We have Administrative Manager Karen Jenks, and I'm Senior Management Analyst Edward Shinavere. We also have, you may have heard already on the line, Gavin Haubelt, who is with the city's Information Services Department, and he'll be offering technology assistance throughout the meeting. So we'll begin the presentation today by introducing the plan and the programs that we'll be discussing. That includes the city's 5-year plan, priorities and goals. We'll discuss the activities which were funded in prior years and which are currently being funded so that you can get an idea for how funds have been spent and are currently being spent, so you can think about how they might be spent in the future. Then we'll head into a community discussion to discuss activities that are most critically needed for the next year, and that's where we'll really be asking for your feedback. Then we'll come back together as a group to summarize the discussions we've had, and finally, we'll give you some information about how you can stay involved in the planning process going forward. With that, let's begin. So HUD CPD, if you hear me refer to HUD CPD, that's the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development's Community Planning and Development Office, which provides us our federal entitlement funding. And the Office of Community Planning and Development, its objective is to develop viable communities by promoting integrated approaches that provide decent housing, a suitable living environment, and expand economic opportunities for low and moderate income persons. And the primary way that they do this is through the development of partnerships among all levels of government and the private sector, including for-profit and nonprofit organizations. And in the next slide, we'll talk about how the city partners with organizations and with HUD CPD to help meet those goals. The planning process for HUD CPD funding begins with the consolidated plan. That's a 5-year plan that HUD requires the city to prepare, outlining the key goals and how the city will generally allocate the funds provided by HUD to the city over the term of the 5 years. The city completed the most recent 5-year plan last year, and I know I've seen the attendee list. Many of you helped us prepare that plan. Then each year, the city will apply for funding from HUD through an annual action plan, which describes how that year's funds will be used to meet the needs of the public and the priorities outlined in the 5-year plan. The activities which are approved for funding in the annual action plan are then completed through agreements with community-based organizations and units of local government, or in the case of affordable housing development, with affordable housing developers. So either the city provides the services or projects, or will partner with an organization or other unit of government or developer to complete that project or service to meet the goals of the plan. As discussed on the previous slide, the activities we fund have to help meet the goals of that 5-year plan. So first, I'll tell you what those goals are, and we'll talk a little bit about each priority area. The first priority is to provide assistance for the homeless and those at risk of becoming homeless through safe, low-barrier shelter options, housing first collaborations, and associated supportive services. The city's 5-year goals include providing rental assistance or rapid rehousing assistance for at least 900 homeless persons and to provide overnight shelter or street outreach services for at least 2,500 persons. We should note here that the city will also, of course, try to implement approaches that exceed these goals, and the city also receives funding from other sources, which we anticipate will allow us to deliver more activities and more accomplishments than the ones that are listed here, which are only associated with the HUD funding specifically, with the annual action plan funding. We'll also discuss on an upcoming slide some of the activities and partners we've worked with in the past or are currently working with to help us meet these goals, and that'll be true of all the priorities. So I'll introduce the priorities one at a time, but then afterwards I'll tell you a little bit about how we implement each one. The next priority is to improve access to affordable housing for low-income and special needs households by partnering with interested developers to increase development of low-income and affordable housing in high opportunity areas. So those are areas with access to quality schools and employment opportunities, and by promoting the preservation and rehabilitation of existing affordable housing units as well. The city's goals over the 5-year period for affordable housing are to add at least 130 affordable rental units, at least 50 new homes for low and moderate income home buyers, and to rehabilitate at least 220 homes owned by low and moderate income persons. And again, those are the goals that are associated with the HUD dollars. The next priority is to promote quality of life and neighborhood revitalization through improvements to current public infrastructure and facilities, and by closing gaps in areas with aging, lower quality, or non-existent public infrastructure and facilities. The 5-year goals here are to provide neighborhood infrastructure or public facility improvements in low and moderate income neighborhoods to benefit at least 50,000 persons. Examples of projects that meet these needs are street and sidewalk improvements in low and moderate income neighborhoods, or facility improvements at parks and recreational facilities, and you'll see some examples of those in the slides ahead. The next priority is to provide services to low-income and special needs households that develop human capital and improve quality of life. The services that we can use these funds to provide are very broad and include services for youth, seniors, health services, employment training services, childcare, drug abuse services, education, energy conservation, or recreation, among others. The 5-year goal here is to provide public services that directly benefit at least 11,300 people directly, and those are low or moderate income persons. Also, as part of this priority, the city has set aside a goal to provide technical assistance to low and moderate income entrepreneurs who are looking to start or expand their businesses within the city of Fresno, with the goal to assist at least 200 entrepreneurs. The final 2 goals are to provide services to residents and fair housing providers to advance fair housing. And we'll talk a little bit about how we're currently doing that on an upcoming slide. And the final priority is to plan and administer funding for community development, housing, and homelessness activities with improved transparency, increased community involvement, and full compliance with federal regulations. This last goal is very important to us to make sure that we not only meet all of the necessary rules and regulations, but also that we plan for these projects in a way that involves the community as much as possible in a transparent and open way, which is really why we're here today. Thank you so much for participating. To give you a little more of an idea about how these funds can be used, we'll talk briefly about how we've used them in the past and how we're currently using them. So we'll start with a quick review of the activities which were completed last year, meaning the 12 months that ended on June 30th, 2020. In the homelessness and homelessness prevention category priority area, we provided emergency shelter and street outreach services in partnership with Marjorie Mason Center and West Care, tenant-based rental assistance programs, which you might hear us refer to as TBRA, Those were provided by the Fresno Housing Authority and WestCare, and homeless prevention services were provided by Turning Point of Central California and WestCare as well. In total, more than 1,200 persons were assisted across all of the homeless and homelessness prevention programs funded by the city's federal funds last year. In the community services priority area, the Parks, After School, Recreation, and Community Services Department operated the city's after-school program at 10 city park locations. Those included Ted C. Wills, Romaine, Quigley, Maxie L. Parks, Lafayette, Holmes, Frank H. Ball, Fink White, Einstein, and Dickey Youth Center. Enrichment programming was provided for seniors 62 years of age and older to complement existing hot meal service at 7 locations, including Lafayette, Mariella Brown, Mosqueda, Pinedale, Senior Citizens Village, Inspiration Park, and at the Ted C. Wills Community Center. The Boys and Girls Club of Fresno County utilized some of our funds to provide education, job training, and recreation for youth ages 6 to 18 at Fink White Park and at their West Fresno Community Center. The Fresno Economic Opportunities Commission's Street Saints program operated in 3 community center sites in Southwest Fresno. Those included Sunset Community Center, MLK Square Apartments, and Hacienda Mirabella Apartments. And Helping Others Pursue Excellence's Hope Builds Micro Enterprise Assistance Program provided 56 businesses with assistance. Altogether, community services funded using these entitlement funds benefited more than 2,400 low-income and special needs persons. The city implemented owner-occupied housing rehabilitation programs as well by providing funding both to its internal housing community development division home repair programs, as well as by providing funding to 3 subrecipient partners, including Habitat for Humanity, Self-Help Enterprises, and Fresno Economic Opportunities Commission. And altogether, the city and its subrecipients assisted 98 households with home repair, senior paint programs, roof repair, or housing rehabilitation programs. In the fall of 2020, developers who received funding from the City of Fresno's Home Investment Partnerships Program completed 2 affordable housing developments, providing 4 single-family homes by Habitat for Humanity's B and Amador project, and 40 multifamily senior housing units completed by Self-Help Enterprises at their Annandale Commons development. Park facility improvements included Fink White Park, which received a new play structure, Holmes Park, which received funding for Americans with Disabilities Act remediation, Ted C. Wills Community Center, which received funding for various improvements, and Romaine Park, which received funding for improvements to doors and bathrooms. These projects combined benefited 43,320 residents in the nearby areas. The City of Fresno Public Works Department completed 2 roadway reconstruction projects utilizing our federal funds during the year. These included the Calwavine MLK neighborhood and Shields Dakota Crystal Hughes neighborhood projects, which benefited 15,040 nearby residents between the 2 of those projects. Both of those projects included pavement reconstruction, including complete pavement removal and reconstructing each pavement section. And in addition, city crews were able to repair curb ramps and gutters and improve ADA accessibility and an overall neighborhood commute improvement. In addition, there were 2 nonprofit facilities who received funding for facility improvements which were completed during the program year, including the Marjorie Mason Center's Safe House bathroom renovation and a fire system upgrade at WestCare. We'll now discuss briefly the activities that were funded for the current year, which the city and its subrecipients are currently implementing. There's not as much detail here because we're in flight, but I'll tell you what we're doing in the current year. The current year, it began on July 20th, or on July 1st rather, 2020. And after we met with the community last winter, we used that input to develop the 5-year plan and to implement the first year of that plan. Funding was set aside for at least 26 new affordable housing units, which will be developed in partnership with affordable housing developers. Project selection for that funding is currently underway. Housing rehabilitation programs also continued to receive funding to offer assistance to homeowners with low incomes to repair and rehabilitate their homes. In addition to the city's own rehabilitation program, Habitat for Humanity and self-help enterprises were also awarded funds to provide home repair and rehabilitation programs. And in total, 54 households are expected to benefit from those programs in the current year. The city's annual funding for homeless and homelessness prevention programs was awarded to Pavarello House for their Homeless Outreach Progressive Engagement Program and Rapid Rehousing Programs, as well as to West Care, California, and their Project Unite program, which offers both rapid rehousing and homeless prevention services. And finally, to the Fresno Housing Authority, who provide rental assistance through the tenant-based rental assistance program. Community services being funded in the current year include continued funding for after-school programs for youth from low and moderate income families at 10 neighborhood and community centers, and senior programs at 7 centers. Those are the same city facilities we discussed for last year's funding. And funding was also awarded to the Boys and Girls Club to provide education, job training, and recreation to youth at their East and West locations, and to Stone Soup Fresno's Family Forward program, which connects adults with community resources and job training. Finally, the Fresno Area Hispanic Foundation's Womanpreneur program received funding for their program, which is designed to assist low-income women entrepreneurs to establish and grow their businesses. I'll take a moment here to note that all of these programs are operating in the current year, even though many have had to adapt their operations in light of the pandemic. Many have shifted to part physical, part virtual, and that, of course, has changed as the situation has changed. The city is also funding fair housing services through Central California Legal Services, which will be providing outreach and education for tenants and landlords, especially with respect to the new requirements that all landlords must accept housing choice vouchers. And the Community Housing Council of Fresno will be conducting a series of fair housing workshops, primarily for prospective home buyers and real estate and finance professionals among the general public as well. The city also funded 5 street improvement projects in low and moderate income neighborhoods, including street improvements for West Fresno Elementary and MLK neighborhood, and the Burroughs Elementary neighborhood, and also began multi-year projects at Yosemite Middle School for their Complete Streets project, a Highway City neighborhood street reconstruction project, and an Erickson Elementary neighborhood street reconstruction project as well. Again, those last 3 are multiple year projects. Among other activities that were funded in prior years, which are still underway, is the multi-generational community center at Large Park on North Millbrook off Gettysburg, which will be a brand new neighborhood center with park facility, including improvements to the park space as well, with a tot lot and sports fields. So we're very excited about that. There's much more information about all of these prior year activities and the current year's activities, and those are available at the city's website at www.fresno.gov/housing. But we wanted to give you some highlights so you can get a sense of what has been done and what is possible with this funding. I'll also note that there is information on the website about one-time funds, which were provided by HUD to address the coronavirus, as well as information about the new state entitlement program called the Permanent Local Housing Allocation. While today's conversation is about the annual HUD entitlement funds only that are programmed and planned through that annual action plan, if you express needs that can be met with other funding sources, of course, we will make sure to pass that information along to the appropriate team members. All right, and it looks like we've got a hand up from Carla Martinez. I'm gonna, if it's okay, I'll go through this very last section and then we'll open it up for questions at that time. I've only got a few more slides left. You won't have to wait too long. All right, so for next year's funding, that's where we are really gonna be asking you for help. For next year, we expect to receive a similar amount of funds as we did in the previous year, which totals to about $11.5 million across 4 federal programs. We'll note that if you are a member of a community organization interested in applying for some of these funds, each has different requirements and regulations, and of course, we are here to help, and we encourage you to reach out. You can, and we'll have some links that we'll provide to you at the end of the presentation to that end. With that, I'll quickly go over the expectations for the community discussion, and then I'll pause briefly for questions. For the community discussion, our host, Gavin, will separate us into breakout rooms for an approximately 50-minute discussion, where you'll have the ability to unmute your microphones and provide input. Each room will have a city staff facilitator who will ask questions, keep time, and make sure everyone's input is heard. Afterward, we'll ask one person from each breakout room to share 1 or 2 topics that came up in the group discussion. And all of your input will be recorded by city staff and taken into consideration during plan development. The goal for the discussions specifically are to answer the questions: what specifically should the city do next year to address the community's priorities? As part of that, what are the community's needs right now? And what specific activities should the city fund to address those needs? Pop over this one here. Whoops, sorry, got a little ahead of myself. All right, so I will pause now for questions. Carla, I think I saw your hand go down. If you still have a question, please raise your hand. And if anybody else has a question, either about the general funds or about the community discussion that we're about to have. And I will pause for just 1 second. Gavin, I'm getting a message that our Spanish interpreter was kicked out of the room and needs to be reassigned as an interpreter. Can you confirm that that's been corrected?
Yeah, that's taken care of. That's not
okay,
a problem.
Excellent. All right, then with that, let's go ahead and break out into our discussion groups. So it looks like we have about 45 folks. Jennifer, would you be willing to facilitate a room?
Absolutely.
Excellent. So then in that case, Gavin, if you can distribute in the main room, anybody who's currently using the interpretation services, and I'll stay in the main room.
There's no way for me to tell who's using interpretation services. So
Should we have if we could have the interpreters possibly switch to the English channel and identify the folks?
or if we can have the interpreters ask the foreign language people to raise their hands, that would probably be a way to do it.
All right, that if the interpreters, if you could ask your stakeholders who are using your interpretation services to raise their hands so we can identify them for the main room.
Who would you like me to assign as a facilitator to these rooms?
So I'll be in the main room, Gavin, and then we'll have Jennifer in room 1,
Okay.
Thomas Morgan in room 2, and Karen Jenks in room 3. And if you can put Mage Tolles with Jennifer as a scribe and Susie Williams with Tom Morgan as a scribe.
Hold on. Going too fast for me. I don't
Yep,
take
I will
shorthand.
pause. We'll get this sorted.
Okay, who's going with Jennifer?
If you can put Mage Tolles with Jennifer, T-O-L-E-S,
We've got her, and who with Tom?
Susie Williams,
Okay. And then with Karen?
with Karen, if you want to send, let's see, if you can put Casey Lauderdale in with Karen.
Casey?
Yep, not as a scribe, just as a participant.
I don't see a Casey.
Oh, I thought I saw her here earlier. Okay, let me just make sure that we've got folks sorted. Okay, if we can put Kevin Watkins with Jennifer.
I was looking for who's going with Karen. I've already got one with Jennifer. But...
And Shelby McNabb can go with Thomas Morgan. And then if we can distribute, make sure that we keep the folks with the hands up, as well as Susan Coulter and our 2 sign language interpreters in the main room with me. Then we can distribute the rest of the attendees evenly between the main room and the 3 breakout rooms.
So no one is going with Karen? No other staff member?
That's right.
Okay, and just so people know, they can exit the room. So if I mistakenly put someone in a room, they can remove themselves from that room and come back to the main room. But I've got several that are just phone numbers too, so I'm going to be assigning those as well.
Okay, great. All right, we'll give just a moment for Gavin to get this all sorted. All right, and Gavin, just let me know once you've got everyone distributed.
It looks like sorry, I'm not used to doing this, especially with many people. Looks like we've got everybody sent off to rooms at this point, except for the 3 with their hand up and Susan Coulter.
All right, it looks like we've still got Jennifer here.
Jennifer who?
Gavin,
Jennifer
I'm
Clark?
yeah, I seem to still be in the main room.
And it looks like we might still have Tom and Karen too.
Okay, they're going to go now. I forgot to open the
Oh,
rooms.
here we go. All right. We've got it.
Grace,
All right, we'll give it a minute for everybody to divvy out. And we will need to give Susan Coulter the ability to turn on video. Should Susan need to provide any input. And then once we've got everybody out of the main room, except for the folks who are going to stay in here with me, then if you can go ahead and unmute, give folks the option to unmute.
Everybody that's still in the room should have the ability to unmute themselves and to start their video if they need to.
Yep, looks like we can, Gavin.
All right.
Fantastic.
Excellent. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with our discussion. I will first ask, it looks like we have two hands up, Salvador Olmos and Estela Ortega. Were those up to stay in the room, or did you have a question?
I just
All right,
put them down and they were to stay in the room. So if they do have questions, they'll need to raise them again.
Excellent. Okay, well then in that case, we'll go ahead and get started with introductions. I'll give each of you about a minute or two to kind of tell me your name, and based on the presentation that you've just seen, what's one or two things that you're really interested in seeing these funds used for? So in just 1 or 2 minutes, and we'll start, how about we start with Estela Ortega. Amelia, is Estela in the channel with you?
Ya está.
Amelia, will you be able to move to?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, yes. So with Zoom, when you have the interpretation on, it works and it can facilitate between English and Spanish, but everybody has to be in a channel. So regardless if you speak if you only speak English, you have to enter the English channel so that way when somebody's speaking, I can simultaneously interpret what they're saying into the English channel.
Okay, got it. So do the rest of us need to go into the English channel? Is
Yes.
that okay? Excellent. Gavin, does that make sense to you? Can you help us make that happen?
You have to do it yourself. I can't do it for you. You have to go into interpretation down at the bottom of the screen.
So everybody regardless needs to go into the English
interpretation.
So what I would say for folks is just if you have the interpreting globe at the bottom, you would just then go into the English channel, because right now we're on the main channel. So you'd go into the English channel and then mute original audio, and you should be able to just hear my interpretation.
Okay, got it. So if I'm understanding right, then everybody who's in this channel who is an English speaker, if you can select interpretation and English. I can. Okay,
That's
excellent.
Cool. Learned something today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Do we have anybody who's left behind in the main channel? Is there a way for us to tell, Gavin?
Nope,
Okay.
there's no way to tell that.
All right, I'm going to pop over one more time. I'm going to turn my interpretation off, just pop over and make sure everybody understands real quick. All right, and if anybody is left in this channel, if you could select the interpretation option at the bottom of your computer screen and select either English, Spanish, or Hmong. Okay, all right, and so Gavin, I do have one thing to report. Susie says she is not in the room with Tom. Not sure where she is. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started then. Let's try this again. Do we have Estela, and would you like to introduce yourself and tell us what you'd like to learn more about, or what you would like to see done with the city's funding, just in 1 or 2 minutes?
¿Me puede repetir la pregunta, por favor?
Sure. If you can introduce yourself, just tell us your name, why you came today, and what would you like to learn more about with regards to this funding, or if there's something that you're particularly passionate about with regard to how we spend this money in the community, just in 1 to 2 minutes, and then we'll come back if we have time.
Pues
to talk more.
mi nombre es Estela Ortega y soy del distrito 7. He estado aquí en Fresno por más de 20 años y pues miro esta comunidad que está mucho en desventaja. No es mi pasión, sino quiero que la comunidad sea mejor, que sea saludable para todos, para toda la comunidad donde yo vivo. Aquí en esta comunidad donde yo vivo, no hay banquetas todavía en una parte. Necesitamos como caminos para caminar, verdes. No hay parques cercas. También hay mucha basura en los canales. Están muy sucias las calles. Y a veces las escuelas no están muy bien arregladas también. Aquí en esta calle que estoy aquí en la Floradora y la Cira, es una zona donde muchos niños caminan, porque hay muchas escuelas elementarias, middle school y preparatorias también, que están conectadas. Está la Roosevelt, la McLean, la Yosemite, que es secundaria, y también está la Mayfair, la Leavenworth, y otras escuelas, son como unas 5 más escuelas, y entonces sí, en estas calles sí andan muchos niños. Entonces sí, a mí sí me gustaría que se preocuparan en arreglar las calles para que los niños caminen a sus escuelas seguros. Y las calles sean con más, que tengan más iluminación también, porque en la noche a veces también está muy oscuro, hay mucho vandalismo. Entonces a mí sí me interesa todo eso, por eso es que estoy en estas reuniones. Gracias.
Thank you. All right, let's move down the list here. To Guillermina León.
Hola, buenas tardes.
Hola.
Mi nombre es Guillermina León y soy de aquí del distrito 3 y me gustaría saber más para tener más fondos para las banquetas en lo que es toda la ciudad de Fresno y más en especial en las comunidades ya existentes, porque en las nuevas comunidades ya es un cambio muy diferente a las comunidades que ya están. Entonces sería bueno invertir en las comunidades que ya existen en banqueta, pasos peatonales, hay algunos lugares que faltan luces también cerca de las escuelas. Y el problema más grande que he visto yo aquí en la ciudad de Fresno es que hay la gente tira mucha basura en las calles. Mira uno en el freeway, también hay mucha basura. Y yo tenía entendido que la ciudad había contratado una compañía aparte para limpiar el freeway, pero creo que falta que limpien mejor porque en el 41, en la 99, hay mucha basura ahí y esa es mi opinión. Gracias.
Thank you. And if I can pop in, I hope Gavin is still in here. So Susie said that, oops, sorry. Okay, great. Susie said that her audio it sounds like she might be logged in twice, possibly once with video and once with audio. And her audio is 246-6076.
I show her in the room with Tom logged in twice. So what would you like me to do? Can you hear me?
Is there someone with phone logged in as a phone number 246-6076?
No.
Yep, I can hear you. Yeah, it might be if there's no way to move that phone number into the room with Tom.
Ed, there is no phone number. The phone number you're telling me there is no.
All right, understood. Thank you. I'm just gonna, I apologize for this, everyone. Everyone's looking to me today. I'm just gonna message Tom and let him know. I'm so sorry. Okay. So excellent. Thank you so much, Guillermina. If we can get the same from Susan Coulter, if you could introduce yourself and tell us about what you're most interested in or what you'd like to learn about.
Hi, this is Susan. Sorry, I don't have mic access right now.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay, I'll go ahead and sign. I do talk for myself, but I'll go ahead and sign. So anyway, thank you so much for hosting tonight. It's a great learning opportunity. My name is Susan Coulter, and I work at the Deaf and Hard of Hearing Service Center. I am also a commissioner on the Disability Advisory Committee for the City of Fresno. Some issues that we've had with deaf people, one of the largest ones is affordable housing. Because of their limited income, a lot of them are dependent on SSI. So they do have a stable income, but also need stable housing. One thing is some of them are on SSDI, which also they are on a stable income as well. But when rent now went up $60 a month, just like that. And so they didn't have enough funding because obviously their income wasn't increased, even though other things were, their bills were increased. In terms of safety, because they can't hear, wanting to make sure that they're in a safe environment and in a safe area, because again, they're deaf, so they cannot hear what's going on in the environment. Also, if somebody were to knock on their door, they don't hear that either. There are special doorbells accessible for deaf and hard of hearing people, but the landlords should be providing that. They should be having lights flash in their apartments. When the doorbell rings or someone knocks, they should have that ability. It needs to be installed in the door or in the apartment, since they won't be hearing the sound. They have the same thing for fire alarms. It's called a strobe light, and so it flashes. So those should be provided for the tenants as well. So those are the main issues that I've seen for the deaf community.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank
you so
you.
much, Susan. All right, let me see if we have we gotten to everybody in this room? I think we have. If we haven't, if you could unmute yourself and let me know. Okay, excellent. It sounds like.
Sí, soy Berta Olmos. Sí, yo soy del distrito 4 y mi preocupación es en las calles de aquí de mi vecindario porque no están muy bien. Incluso una calle principal de aquí tiene muchos hoyos, nomás vienen y los tapan, pero no solucionan el problema. Han arreglado las calles de cerca de aquí, pero en esta no, nada más vienen y tapan hoyos, pero ya se vuelven a ser igual, o sea, no hay solución en eso. Y quería ver a ver qué es lo que podemos hacer en este caso, ¿verdad? Y también de cómo yo he visto mucho indigente por aquí alrededor. Y también pues estaba viendo que hay maneras también de ayudarlos a ellos y eso es lo que más me preocupa en este caso.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that, Bertha. Was there anyone else that I missed? Introductions and your first impressions and ideas. All right, I think we have spoken to everybody once. So the next thing we'll do, I'd like to do a slightly deeper dive, try to get more information about the activities that you are most interested in. And I think if I heard correctly, we'll start with neighborhood infrastructure and facility improvements, because that's the category where we can use that funding to pay for things like street improvements, park facilities, things like that, community facilities that benefit the neighborhood. We can rehabilitate them, we can build new ones, we can repair streets and sidewalks and things like that. So let's start with that category. I'm just gonna jump in here. So so I think I heard one specific area at Floridora and Cedar, and that was Estela Ortega, I think, who mentioned that one. Is that approximately the area where the issue is the most severe?
¿En qué calles me dijo?
I wrote down Floridora and Cedar.
Sí, sí.
Yeah.
Sí.
And so specifically, I think you said benches, sidewalk, that those were the main issues.
Los canales están llenos de personas indigentes. Hay mucha basura. Parte de la floradora no tiene luces y también banquetas. Los cercos de la escuela de la Yosemite no están arregladas. Aquí no hay un lugar para ir a caminar al aire libre, no hay un lugar o un parque para ir a caminar, por decir. No hay carriles de bicicleta tampoco.
No bike lanes. Okay, great.
Y muchos perros. Hay muchos perros sueltos.
That's really good feedback. Thank you so much for that. Does anybody else have any specific examples that might benefit? Let's stick with street and sidewalk improvements real quick.
Sí. Hola, soy Guillermina otra vez del Distrito 3. Aquí en la comunidad de Adams, nos falta completar la banqueta y carriles de bicicleta para los estudiantes, porque en los planes anteriores de la ciudad estaba que iban a completar la banqueta y los carriles de bicicleta de la McKinley, entre la McKinley y la Olivo, en la calle Hughes, pero no se llegó a completar. No sé si sea en escasez de fondo o no sé, y ese era nuestro plan, tener banquetas y carriles de bicicleta en el lado de la Hughes hasta la Olivo, y en la Luz tener un pase para peatones o poner una luz, porque ha habido accidentes ahí, ha habido muertes también porque los carros pasan y no miran a los niños en tiempo de neblina. Con ese tiempo, los niños iban a la escuela y llegaban tarde porque los carros no les daban pase a los estudiantes para poder pasar, porque ahí son 4 stops. Entonces estábamos pidiendo si la ciudad puede ayudarnos a poner en el plan las luces para la Olivo y la Hughes, y a completar la banqueta de la Hughes de McKinley, Olivo y Olivo Mars, y Olivo entre Hughes y Mars, a completar la banqueta. Y yo he ido también en el área de la Kearney, por el lado de la Sunset, la escuela Sunset, y hay un problema muy grande ahí. Hace 5 años también lo reporté, pero la gente sigue tirando basura ahí todos los días. La ciudad pasa y recoge, pero siempre hay alguien más que va y tira basura. No sé qué puedan hacer en ese plan, cercar la calle o poner cámaras para resolver ese problema.
Okay, thank you for that feedback. That's great feedback. I will note, typically code enforcement activities like the trash is usually ineligible. But that doesn't mean that there couldn't be a community service that we might be able to fund to help to clean up streets that would also benefit low and moderate income neighborhoods and things like that. So there are some ideas there that we can consider. But definitely thank you for your input on the sidewalks. And especially and if I got it right, it was the intersection at Olive and Hughes, correct? Where there was a lot of dangerous activity.
Sí.
Great. Thank you, Guillermina. And it looks like Berta Olmos has a hand up.
Sí. Sí, yo quería darle más o menos la ubicación de la calle esa que te digo que están con muchos hoyos. Es en la Chestnut y Weldon. Todo este vecindario no tiene como salida. Tenemos forzosamente que pasar por la Weldon para poder salir a la Chestnut. So, esa área, ese pedazo está muy mal, en muy malas condiciones.
Great, thank you for that feedback. So Chestnut and Wilden, lots of potholes was the big issue, right? Or were there some other major issues in that intersection?
Sí. Sí, el problema de los indigentes, pero ya escuché de que tiran mucha basura y todo eso, pero bueno, pienso que a lo mejor hablando y uniéndose, pueden hacer algo con esas personas, ¿verdad? Porque vienen y menean los botes de la basura y tiran toda la basura y dejan basura por todos lados. Entonces, eso, pues sí preocupa.
What would, if I can ask, how would you recommend that the city work to solve that issue?
Bueno, no sé si tenga como apoyo para las personas indigentes que los puedan ayudar. Una vez comentaba a mi esposo que sí tienen como lugares para que los ayuden, pero dice que personas no quieren estar allí porque les exigen, pero no sé qué realmente es lo que les exigen. Yo pienso que tiene que haber requisitos para poder estar en esos lugares, ¿verdad? Entonces, a lo mejor esas personas no quieren o son personas drogadictas o no sé, ¿verdad?
So maybe they're not going to the services because those services have certain requirements in order for them to receive service.
Sí, pues pienso yo que a lo mejor sea eso, porque yo platicando con mi esposo, ¿verdad? Porque le digo, pues últimamente sí estamos viendo mucho más indigentes, ¿verdad? Entonces, fue lo que me estaba comentando mi esposo. Dice, no, sí hay, dice, pero la gente no quiere, ¿verdad? Pero entonces no sé allí qué podemos hacer en este caso para poder, tener nuestras calles limpias y que pues cuando nuestros hijos salen a caminar o lo que sea, o incluso uno también, no ande uno cayéndose ahí con la basura que ellos tiran y todas esas cosas.
Great, thank you for that input. I think I see, I want to check in real quick with
¿Puedo dar un
Susan.
comentario?
Oh, yep, go ahead, Estela.
Sí, yo lo que quería decir sobre la basura es que hay varias organizaciones que a veces reúnen a comunidad voluntaria para juntar la basura. Yo fui una de las voluntarias para juntar la basura, pero a mí no me pagaron. A mí me gustaría que les dieran ese incentivo a las organizaciones para que junten a la comunidad y pudieran limpiar también las calles. Y otra cosa también de los indigentes, hay muy pocas viviendas para ellos. Casi no hay muchas viviendas para ellos. Me gustaría que también invirtieran en hacerle más viviendas para que así también tengan un lugar donde vivir. Y luego los indigentes están más de este lado que en la zona de Clovis. En Clovis no vemos indigentes. ¿Por qué en ese lugar no vemos indigentes y todos los indigentes están en este lugar?
Great, that's great. Those are great ideas. Really appreciate that idea. So incentives for volunteers to help clean up the neighborhood. That's what I heard. I'm not sure if we can pay for that or not, but it's something we can look into. Okay, so I would like to, so Susan, you pointed out some issues around affordability primarily, and it sounds like also possibly some issues with having the appropriate facilities for folks who are deaf and hard of hearing. Could you elaborate a little bit on how you think, how we might be able to help solve that problem? Oh, if we still have you, can
Yes.
everybody? Excellent.
I do think that there needs to be more education for people, for the landlords to understand what the issues are. The fact that these deaf individuals are not able to hear, and they often request a special doorbell that alerts them that someone is at the door, but landlords have no idea where to go and purchase these things. And I think we need to see additional education so that we can provide those special doorbells so that they can know someone's at the door. For safety reasons, if nothing else, if a police officer comes to the door and rings the doorbell, they will not hear that unless they obtain this special equipment that does need to be purchased and installed upon request. And that there's a huge issue in regards to alarms. There are smoke alarms available, and the fire department has been purchasing and providing deaf individuals with those special alarms. But because deaf people do not hear the regular smoke alarms, typically they will put the normal smoke alarm up there that is a sound-based smoke alarm. But if you don't hear it, that doesn't alert them. If a deaf person is sleeping in the middle of the night, they're not going to respond to that. However, if that is replaced with a special strobe light, that will be noticed. So if monies are available to purchase those specialized devices when they are requested by a deaf individual.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for that. That's a great idea. Are you aware, Susan, of any organizations that might be in the business of providing the kind of education that landlords need? A nonprofit organization?
Yes, my organization where I work, the Deaf and Hard of Hearing Service Center, we can provide that type of education. However, the landlords have to be willing to listen to the information that we have to share and provide.
Okay. So really kind of outreach materials for landlords. Okay.
Yes, yes.
Excellent. So this makes me think, first, before I go to the question I was going to ask, it looks like we have an Elisa here. Elisa, if you would like to introduce yourself, I think we might have missed you in the first round, or maybe you just came in, and tell us a little bit about what you're interested in terms of how we can spend our federal money. And I know you might have missed the presentation, but I'm happy to help you.
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry, I just got off work and I was really hoping to get into the meeting early, but I'm so glad I'm here and I'm glad to join you guys.
Great. So we were talking a little bit about, we introduced the kinds of things that this money can fund. And just as a real quick summary, affordable housing, we can partner with developers. Homelessness, we can help fund emergency shelters and rental assistance. Community services, we can do things like employment training, youth and senior programming. We can use the money to invest in low and moderate income neighborhoods. We've spoken quite a bit about that with regard to street improvements and neighborhood facility improvements. We can also use it for fair housing education and outreach. Is there anything in particular that you think we should do more or less of, or that you'd like to learn more about?
Oh, well, I think all those are great ideas. I'm happy that everybody's brought that up. Just a little bit about myself. I was born in Fresno. I was born and raised in District 1, and I bought a home in District 1 and so what I am seeing now in my whole neighborhood, I don't know if the federal funding will be going to districts. Is that also included for usage or just?
No. Yeah, the thing about the federal funding is that the government requires us to allocate it based on need. So we can't kind of say this is for District 1 and this is for District 2. So that's what we're doing here today, is where is the money most needed? So you can certainly provide some ideas for your district.
I see. Okay, I see. Well, an idea I had then it would be I think the street sweeping situation. I'm hoping maybe throughout Fresno. I know there's some certain neighborhoods that have signs up that on certain days that you can't park in the street because a street sweeper is going to come by. So maybe I'm hoping that could get thrown a little bit of funds for it, to have maybe signage posted for when street sweeping schedules are for you know, the district days, or I know everybody's different. Because, you know, as more cars, you know, they're parked on city streets, city neighborhood streets, and the street sweeper cannot get by. So, you know, we're paying for, if we're paying into the street sweeping service, you know, through our utilities. And personally, in my District 1, I've been here for, in the house that I've been here for 15 years, and it's only been swept in front of my house like 10 times, because there's always cars lined up and down the street, and the street sweeper can't get by. So I'm hoping maybe a little bit of money can get thrown that way in a general street sweeping signage posted. And, you know, and it'll also help the city get some revenue with ticketing. You know, it's like, don't park here on this day. If you are, you're gonna get ticketed and you'll just have to pay a fine. So that's just a general idea that I had about that.
Great, thank you,
You know,
Elisa.
keep our city clean with at least, you know, street sweeping.
Yeah, that's definitely come up a few times in today's conversation about keeping the city clean. So thank you for that input.
Thank you.
I will
Thank
say,
you for the opportunity.
with this specific money, that might not be eligible because it might be considered a general city thing that we're supposed to. Yeah, but I will pass that information along and that idea for sure.
Okay, great. Well, like I said, all the other ideas are wonderful. I'm glad people brought out some good ideas.
Yes,
Thank
me
you.
too. Yes, thank you, Elisa. Okay,
Thank
and
you
it
for
looks
the
like
opportunity.
we might have also been joined by a Erica Camarena.
It wasn't what I thought it was.
If there's a Erica Camarena on the line who would like to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit. Yep, go ahead,
Ed,
Kevin.
I believe Erica is with the city attorney's office.
Oh, okay, got it. How about we've got a phone number ending in 1239, Gavin. Is there a way for that person to comment, or do they need to go into one of the breakout rooms because of the interpretation?
They can comment as well by pressing *6 to unmute themselves.
*6? Yes. Oh, okay, great. So if the person with the phone number 903-1239, if you would like to unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and give us a little bit of information about what brought you here today. All right. Looks like we might, if you're trying to *6 to unmute yourself, we're not getting you. 903-1239.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear. Is that Erica?
I'm so sorry. I'm trying to communicate my phone, but I'm having a lot of difficulty.
Yeah, we've got that's okay. We've got an echo. Erica, can I connect with you after the meeting?
Yes, absolutely. Anytime.
All right, excellent. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and, oh, there we go. Okay, I'm so sorry about that. It might be, I'm wondering if it's the interpretation. Okay, so before we rejoin the main room in about 5 minutes, I do want to bring up something that I haven't heard a lot about so far and see, I think it might be connected. One of the things that we can fund, and that is a new priority for us this year, are fair housing services. So we can provide tenant and landlord counseling. You know, we could fund an attorney to go out and talk, provide educational materials to residents in the community. We can provide educational materials for folks so that they can understand what their rights are under the law with regard to discrimination and things like that. And I think it might be kind of connected. I heard a little bit about, you know, especially with regard to the deaf and hard of hearing and landlords maybe not being responsive to some of your needs. Is that something that anybody on the line thinks we might do more of? And if so, how you think we should do that? I'll just throw that out there. All right, well, with that then, I will, I'll ask, is there anybody in this room who would like to, when we rejoin the main group, who would like to represent this group and some of the ideas that we came up with? You would just basically say one or two of the things that we discussed today and present that to the main group when we rejoin the main group.
Si quiere, lo puedo hacer yo.
Okay, great. Who was that? Okay, Estella, that would be great. Thank you. And everybody else, I've got all of your comments written down, so we'll make sure that they're all taken into consideration in the plan. Gavin, I'm not sure if you can kind of start a clock for 2 minutes for 6:50 for us to come back together. And in the meantime, if anybody has any last thoughts or ideas to share, I would be more than happy to include them in the plan and to pass them along if we can't use these funds.
Ed, have you notified the other people who are going to close the rooms? Because I don't want to interrupt right in the middle of something.
When you start doesn't it come up as like a countdown timer?
Yeah, I guess it does, doesn't it? When I close the rooms, I've never been in a breakout room, so.
Yeah, I think so. If you could, maybe we're at 6:49, so might be a good time for us to recall everyone in about 1 minute. I can send a text message to you. Okay, so one more minute while everybody rejoins. If anybody has any final thoughts on even community
Y a veces
outreach.
invierten en las viviendas, pero a veces la renta es muy cara y no es muy accesible para nosotros que somos de bajos ingresos. Y a mí me gustaría que sí tuviera uno más el acceso a poder rentar una vivienda de bajos ingresos.
Mm-hmm. What would be your definition of an affordable home? Like how much would you pay?
Ahorita pues para mí sería como 500, de 550 para 2 cuartos, a mí sí se me hace bien. Como ahora me subieron la renta, ya va a llegar a 700. Ya no es una cantidad que yo no puedo pagar. Y el apartamento no está en muy buenas condiciones.
Mhm. Thank you.
Pero a
Thank
veces
you for
nosotros,
that feedback.
los de bajos ingresos, tenemos que soportar esas cosas, porque si buscamos otros apartamentos ahorita ya hay de 800, de 700 y hasta de $1,000. Ya no podemos pagar un apartamento tan caro, siendo que estamos trabajando, somos de bajos ingresos.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Estela, for that feedback. I think at this point we need to switch back, if we're in the English channel, to the main channel. Is that right, Gavin?
You'll just turn interpretation off.
Oh, okay. Got it. So everybody that's rejoining the main room, are they going to come into the English channel?
They will come in as they left with no interpretation on.
Oh, okay. So should I turn mine off is my question.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
So Edward, we were rejoined.
So
We
with
were
consecutive,
kicked
would
back into the
you,
main room.
how would that work?
You were talking at the same time Tom was talking, Ed. What?
Oh, okay. So would Estela turn interpretation off for a moment?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, so once I turn my interpretation off, she'll be able to do that?
You're asking me things I don't know the answer to. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm not used to having to do with all this interpretation. So if she needs to speak in Spanish, then everybody's going to have to join the English channel in order to hear the Spanish interpreter, just like we were when everybody's in the breakout room. That's the only way the English people are going to hear the Spanish interpreter translating, is if they're on the English channel. So everyone in the main room that speaks English will need to go to interpretation and turn on English interpretation. That way you can hear the Spanish interpreter interpret for the Spanish speaking people.
Okay. Estela, would you be okay if I read out for the room, just so that and I promise we'll try to make this better next time.
Sí, está bien.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Estela. All right, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. Okay, apologies for the delay. I was just finishing up in my room. Thank you, everybody. We had a great conversation, and I hope you did too. Gavin, can you give me a thumbs up if I'm speaking into the right channel?
I can hear you. I think everybody else can probably hear you as well.
We can hear
Excellent. Okay, perfect. All right. Well, with that, thank you so much, everybody. Great conversation. And at this point, we'll ask that one person who was identified in each room to read out one or two of the things that you identified in your room as a priority or a major need. We would love to get your input and share it with the group. So with that, I will start. Jennifer, if you'd like to start with your group.
Great. We had an excellent discussion. Our reporter for tonight will be Vicentia Bundes.
Perfect. So in our group, we talked about veterans and some of the needs, assistance and preventative programs that would be much needed and essential, especially with the elderly. We also looked into infrastructure and costs around some like sidewalks that are missing. They're chunks of parts of the neighborhood, in particular in Lowell, that we've identified that do not have sidewalks. So when it comes to weather, there's some issues there with small businesses being affected by it, and also some homes, residential homes in that area. So those are just the two of the things that we mentioned.
Thank you very much, Vicentia. A big focus on homelessness, on affordable housing, pathways to home ownership, and rehab and access to quality affordable housing. So those we had a really great conversation in our room. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Vicentia. All right, let's go to Karen Jenks. to your room. Do you have a speaker for your room?
The speaker will be myself.
Excellent.
So we had a good conversation as well, and there were two things that came up as the main priorities. The first one being the concern that we in the county of Fresno has the highest rate of domestic violence in the state of California. And so getting the funds prioritized for emergency services for domestic violence victims. And since we only have the one provider, if they don't get funded, then there isn't really anybody else to provide those services. That was discussed. And then the second one was street and pavement improvements, specifically in one neighborhood of Chestnut and Weldon. We happen to have two people from the same neighborhood on the call and in the same group. So they both voiced their concern about getting those roads fixed, and specifically also some speed bumps added near the school of Erickson, because cars drive that street very quickly. And one of them, in fact, was works at Erickson Elementary, and said that even while she was on crosswalk duty, cars have been very dangerous. So they would really like to see those streets improved and speed bumps added.
Great, thank you. All right, and Tom Morgan, how about for your room? Do you have a speaker?
Yes, we had a very good discussion, and I believe as we were being kicked out of the room by the system, Glenna was volunteering to be the reporter. So I'm going to unmute Glenna, and she can quickly throw it back to me if that's not what she was saying. So, let's see. Gavin, can you okay. I'm apparently not doing something right to unmute her. Can you?
Yeah,
unmute?
Glenna, I think you can unmute yourself at this point. There you go. Perfect.
Okay. Well, we talked about the fair housing and affordable housing the most, and about the homeless and the infrastructure. And then some of them talked about transparency and compliance and enjoying talking to the public. Well, they was talking about Susie, I guess. And that we need affordable housing that is, not run down. It has to be quality. And if there's anything else, Tom can finish it.
No, I think that's accurate in terms of what all we talked about. I think the strongest sentiment amongst the group that I could bear is about the tremendous need of affordable housing in the community. It was folks were pretty conflicted as to housing type. There was strong voices for rental versus home ownership. I would say that it was a near draw. But at the same time, there was a tremendous recognition for the need for preservation. So that was ranked in our group as the #1 priority in terms of me literally tabulating the counts. Homeless came second, and there was tremendous interest in that as well. And fair housing, as Glenna pointed out, there was also tremendous interest in that. And then, quite frankly, everyone was fairly conflicted in that they thought community services and infrastructure improvements, particularly major corridors and things like that, needed assistance. So I think I'll stop with the remarks there, Edward, because I know we're time limited, and I'll give you the write-up tomorrow as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Glenna.
You're welcome.
So, yes. In our group, I will first apologize to Estela, who asked to speak, but unfortunately we have some issues with the interpretation, and I will pause for 1 second to see if Amelia has found a way to make it work. If not, I'll go ahead and provide her feedback.
Just giving you a thumbs up.
All right. I'm gonna give you 1 second if you have a solution to type in the chat box, maybe.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. All right. I'll go ahead and read out for our group. So we had a really great conversation, and a lot of the conversation in our group was around street and sidewalk improvements. There was a lot of emphasis on streets that were in disrepair with potholes and with unsafe crosswalks in particular. There were several locations mentioned. I won't go through all of them in detail, but I've got all of those locations written down, and really appreciate the group for providing all of that specific information about those dangerous sidewalks, dangerous crosswalks, lack of street lighting. There was also a lot of conversation about garbage in the streets and what could we do about that. So we did speak a lot about that. And the other category that I think we spent a lot of time on was affordable housing and housing criteria for landlords who are renting to folks who are deaf and hard of hearing, to make sure they have the education in place, that they know what is available in terms of fire alarms, that strobe, and things like that, just to make sure they know what they ought to provide for folks who are deaf and hard of hearing, and maybe that they have the resources to provide that. So those were some of the key things that came up in my group. And with that, I will thank everyone, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again, and we will talk a little bit about how to stay involved as we move forward. All right, so everybody see my screen? Karen, give me a thumbs up. I see a head shake, great. All right, so let's talk a little bit about how you can stay involved in this planning process as we move forward. All right, so on the screen here, you'll see the schedule for the development and approval of the annual action plan. Coming up next, we have a City Council Community Needs public hearing that will be on January 28th at 10:05 a.m. or thereafter. We'd like to invite each of you to participate in that hearing. Comments that are submitted during that City Council public hearing are very important. They'll be officially recorded with the plan, and also the comments will be considered by the City Council, which must approve the final plan before we submit it to HUD. So we would definitely very strongly encourage you, if you have the time and availability. I know City Council can be slightly unpredictable, but around 10:05 a.m. or thereafter is when we expect that public hearing on January 28th. Following that public hearing, we'll prepare a notice of funding availability. And what that is essentially it'll publish to the community, here are the funds that are available, and here are the activities that we would like to request applications for. And so from there, then city departments and divisions, other units of local government, as well as community-based organizations can submit applications for that federal funding. We will also announce some technical assistance webinars and opportunities for organizations to receive support in preparing those applications. There's a lot of criteria with regard to federal entitlement funding, so we definitely want to make ourselves available should any community organizations require assistance in preparing their applications. So look out for that if you represent an organization or are aware of an organization who might be interested. Definitely bookmark our website, and we should be posting soon the dates for those technical assistance webinars to provide assistance in response to that notice of funding availability for applications. And also, if you email hcdd@fresno.gov, we will put you on a mailing list and notify you when things like that become available. Applications will be due on March 5th, after which the staff will review those applications and score them according to the criteria, which will also be published with that notice of funding availability. We'll review those applications with an ad hoc committee of the City Council, and then we'll prepare the annual action plan, which will be published for comment on March 19th, and that'll be open for public comment through April 20th, 2021. And after that, there will be one final public hearing where members of the public can provide input on the plan before we submit it to HUD. And that hearing will be on April 22nd, 2021 at 10 a.m. in front of City Council. And after the public hearing, the City Council we ask the City Council to consider the plan for adoption. Note that the Affordable Housing Development and Substantial Rehabilitation NOFA, that's the one for affordable housing developers to apply for funding. That one's on a slightly different timeline. So that one will be released on May 17th and be due on July 5th. And we also anticipate that we'll have a separate NOFA this year as well, similar to how we did last year for fair housing services. So the fair housing services NOFA will be on a slightly different timeline as well, but we'll be keeping the website updated. And to that, if you have more input to share, give me 1 second. I want to make sure that I put these links in the chat box so that you can click on them or copy them. Nope, let me see if I, here we go, chat. Excellent, okay, so I put some links in the chat box. And those links are some additional ways that you can provide input. We welcome and encourage all of your input, and the key ways that you can do that are first, we very much, like I said, I will reiterate again, if you can attend the public hearing, we would love to have you there and have you address the City Council on January 28th. You can find the instructions on how to participate in the public hearing. Those will be posted 72 hours in advance at fresno.legistar.com/calendar.aspx, also in the chat box. You can also submit input by web survey. That's surveymonkey.com/r/COF action 21. That survey is open now. So if there's anything that you didn't get to say today, you can put it in that web form and that will be submitted directly to us. Or you can submit input by email to hcdd@fresno.gov, by phone to 559-621-8300, touch to type at 559-621-8721, or by fax to 559-457-1579. And we would love to hear any of the input that you may have. And with that, I will thank you all very much for attending today, and we really hope to continue to hear from you as we continue to develop next year's plan. Thank you all for joining.
Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Gavin, I think we are good to close the recording and the meeting. Thank you so much, interpreters. Thank you so much, facilitators. Everybody have a great evening.